Okay, welcome everybody. Usual preamble, the Scrutiny Committee meeting is being conducted on a hybrid basis in accordance with the Local Government Elections Wales Act 2021, which will operate alongside the Council's standard orders. Council standard orders and code of conduct apply at all times during this meeting. In the same way as ordinary meetings, members should conduct themselves accordingly. A recorded version of this meeting will be uploaded for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the council. Okay, so first on the agenda is apologies for absence.
We've got apologies, Chair, from the leader, Councillor Rian Howells, Councillor Clark, and from the committee, Councillor Alex Pym, Councillor Screen, Councillor Wright. Councillor Dawson as well, sorry, Chair.
Yeah, and Councillor wasn't sure whether she was okay. Okay, any other apologies from anybody? Nothing to note from officers? Fantastic, okay. Declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest from any members? No, okay. Okay, so we're on to service area end of year reviews for the 25-26 financial year. So I'll hand over to officers for an initial sort of run through and then we'll pass in the committee to ask questions. Over to you, Mike, unless you want to say anything else?
No, it's okay. Right, thanks very much. So I'm joined today by two of the service managers, Leanne is on annual leave, and also joined by the cabinet member for housing and planning, and Councillor Dan oversees legal services and registration. As you've already noted, Councillor Courtney has passed on their apologies. So just to set out who's here. It's been a generally good year for law and standards. I'll set that out in the preamble on the report. In terms of legal services, increasing focus on making sure that we're delivering on the council's priorities and doing work that's actually effective for achieving what the council needs to achieve. There's been a lot of work done in terms of building really strong relationships with other services across the council, and that sort of partnership working. That's evidenced by one of the case studies right at the end of the report, where legal services have worked hand in hand with finance and with adult social care to recover in excess of £2.5 million worth of unpaid debt, which obviously makes a significant contribution to the council's bottom line. So some really good things going on in legal services. Democratic services as well have had successes, increasing efficiencies in terms of how they're administering things. Leanne has led on the community boundary review, which has been a fantastic piece of work. It was a piece of work that we were required to do. It was quite a complicated piece of work. It required going through some really complex plans and some quite knotty issues in places. That's going to full council tomorrow now, the final report on that. I mean, I wanted to say that that's been a really excellent example of member officer working. That task and finish group and how we've interacted with members and other officers on that really. I think that's really been a stellar example of how we can all do good work together. So I wanted to flag that. Registration services, again, they've delivered some practical improvements. We've now got a much better online offering than we had. We've got a dedicated websites for both the coroner service and the registry office, and we've introduced and implemented online certificate ordering in the register office, which really does bring us into the 21st century and is the first step in residents, service users being able to act with us in a more modern way, which is easier for residents and easier for staff. So again, you'll see when we start to go through the service plan, a big drive in there is more efficient ways of working in the implementation of technology. So that's a great example of that. A little bit about priorities for 2027. I mean, obviously it is a challenging environment. You'll hear that off every service that comes in, and that comes a massive surprise. increasing statutory burdens, particularly on other services, tends to increase the workload on legal services. So the challenge is going into 2027 and how we keep up with that, and how we resource effectively, but also prioritise effectively to make sure that we're really focused on doing what absolutely needs to be done, both in terms of keeping council compliant, but also delivering on council's corporate priorities. So that brings it back to legal services. I should mention electoral services as well. Whilst I'm sitting here, they did a fantastic job of delivering the Senate election. I don't think anyone was really sure how. I think we thought it would be fine, but obviously with a new way of voting and a lot more candidates to marshal and different ways of doing things there was an element of uncertainty, but they handled it magnificently. So I just wanted to put on record that they did a fantastic job, and I know the Chief Executive has already said that as well. So that's the preamble. I don't know, Chair, if you want me to go through all of the bits in the table, or shall I just pick out a few which perhaps we're finding a bit more challenging?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't go through line by line, everybody should have had the papers, but if you want to highlight a couple of things you want to draw the committee's attention to, then we can throw open questions if that's okay.
I think, I'll start with the red, because if I don't mention it, the committee will, won't they? So, we've got a very challenging statistic in the coroner's service, and this was the case at the last meeting as well. I mean, this is simply as a result of changes in the landscape around us, and we're far from the only coroner's service which is affected by this. There were some changes 18 months, 2 years ago, where the statutory medical examiner was brought in. That has brought about an increased number of referrals, but also an increased number of complex referrals. We're seeing an increased number of complex medical cases coming through which require more thorough examination, more involved examination. It takes longer for the coroner's officer to gather the information that they need. It takes the coroner longer to consider it. You add them together and multiply it, and you can predict the outcome. We are looking at solutions on that. We're looking at first how we're processing those cases. So there's a bit of work going on at the moment. Just to consider in that team, is there any way we could be doing anything differently to get those cases through more quickly? After that, I suspect there is going to need to be more resourcing in that service. But we just want to make sure the baseline is right before we go asking for more resources to go into that. So it's kind of a phased approach, make sure the foundations are solid, and then put the additional staff in. But that I think is inevitable, and I'm afraid it will be compounded by the Public Office Accountability Bill, which contains, whilst that legislation does a lot of good, it will have an impact on services like that in terms of an increased number of lawyers in that service and the corresponding increased amount of time it will take for colleagues, increased length of inquests and so on. So that was the main one I wanted to flag. I mean, in terms of the other performance measures, there are a couple that are slightly under. I think what I would say, if we look at registration services customers seen within 10 minutes, I mean, that's slightly into amber. It's 87.7% against the target of 90. That's not a high number of births to be registering compared to somewhere like Thrawsnewid, which has got the main general hospital for the area. So it doesn't take very many. Sorry, no more percentage of births registered on that. 96%. I mean, that's one registration list, and we're not registering very many births because the general hospital for the area is outside. And the percentage of registration services customers see within 10 minutes, that's 87.7% against the target of 90%. So that's not horrendous to begin with, but you can see in the narrative there was a slight training issue within the service. We've worked to ensure consistent recording practices, and we will see an improvement on that for next time. And it was compounded by there being a pilot of a new national registration system as well, which we're through and past now. But I mean, the rest of the performance measures in there are green, and consistent with what I've been saying about legal services. They're doing a great job in terms of interacting with other parts of the organisation, and a sustained increase on democratic services KPI as well, in terms of the production of council minutes within 14 days of meetings. You can see the upward trajectory on that since 24-25. I mean, there are a few other things there that are in amber. I don't think, having said that, I mean, they're amber because we've taken on a lot and we're having to program it in. But the narrative next to all of those ambers says how we're going to address it. And it's amber because possibly we've been a bit over ambitious in terms of what we're trying to do, but I'm not going to take those things out because they are things that we're doing. I think, Chair, I'll pause there in case the Director or the Cabinet member wants to add anything.
Thank you, Chair. I think Mike's given a detailed report with regards to legal services aspect and registration services. Figures-wise, if we look at registration services, it's not a huge disparity in terms of what we've missed target-wise. I think it's the 25 out of 26.
Yeah.
When you look at the percentage, you think there's quite a gap there. But we've also, of course, identified, as you quite alluded to, like a training gap in terms of our staff when it comes to the administrative side of data recording. And Jane can, add on to that if she wishes. With regards to the legal services aspect, they've done a great job, as Mike said. Debt recovery, working alongside debtors, and other services areas, particularly social care. We're looking at circa £2 million, which is a huge financial gain for the council as a group one, which goes back into our public services. So that's about it from me, I think, Chair. If you want to ask any questions, if you want to ask questions for that, guys.
Fantastic. Bruce, happy to? Yes, Councillor Oxford.
Thank you, Chair. Page 6 of your report, review of the council's constitution. Over in the end of the year assessment, you say the last line: the council needs to reach a consensus regarding how to move forward with this item. So you're saying it's outside of your control at the moment. Could somebody give an indication as to what the council needs to do to make this happen and reach the timeline?
I think the cabinet member's not here at the moment. That falls under the quarter, I understand. However, Mike's the head of service, and I'm sure Mike be in a position to answer that.
I'm sure Mike is.
Yeah, thanks. It's an issue you're familiar with, isn't it, Councillor Montfort? I think it.
Yeah, but I'm talking to the report and Chair.
Of course you are. Yeah. I think.
Because it's a jeopardy, isn't it?
Yeah.
If the council cannot decide how to go forward, then the date is in jeopardy, and that's effectively why it's in amber, I guess.
Yeah.
Because there's uncertainty. The date itself, the completion date, seems a long way off, but it's a big task. That much I understand. But it's not going to happen unless there's a mechanism to make it happen, an agreed mechanism.
So the view that I've had since I came here is that the council's current constitution is just about fit for purpose, but it's not a very good document. It contains a lot of different things. It's not very well structured. It's not very logical, and it perhaps doesn't contain certain things that the constitution should contain. So my view remains that we would be better off as a council replacing it with a new fit for purpose, tailor-made document. And I mean, there are examples of such documents that can be used. Obviously, how one goes about that, you know, whether we try and redraft that in-house or whether we try and get a consultant in to do that, which is the current suggestion on it. So the suggestion is that it be outsourced to somebody who will come in and take on that piece of work, rewrite the document. Bluntly, that comes at a cost, and there is an ongoing conversation about how we are going to resource that cost.
So, Chair, is this something that the committee can be a recommendation that the cabinet member addresses this issue? It's a concern about the performance from the report. I don't think it needs a resolution. Otherwise, we might come back here next year and the answer might be the council needs to find a way forward. So we need to address it, and somebody needs to be tasked with how to move forward with this item.
Yeah, I mean, the committee can make a recommendation that the cabinet member sort of lands the direction of travel. That's no issue. I mean, I know from conversations we've had at group leaders meetings as well that we agreed the sort of direction to employ a consultant. I mean, I was under the impression that the leader had sort of made money available for that, or offered to make money available for that. So we did sort of tell them a different story.
Well, we haven't identified where that money's come from. So the next stage in that process would be to identify where that funding is coming from.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess it's a recommendation for the cabinet to find the funding to proceed with the direction of travel, isn't it? We're able to make that recommendation to the cabinet.
Yeah, you can make a recommendation. It's been raised as part of service plan review. Yeah. You know, Mike is the third. Mike's the third monitoring officer now. Grappling with this. As a council, we've got to think about a different way of doing it. That we work out to that conclusion. We just need to bring to finalisation.
So, anything from anybody online on that, or all happy with that recommendation? We'll ratify the recommendations at the end anyway. So, okay. Anything else from anybody? Okay, I was just going to pick up on your point firstly on the drop in the stats for not the birth registrations, the other one. I'm just scrolling back to my pages now, apologies. They're 87.7%. I guess the only comment to make on that is they're consistently down year on year, and we're dealing with half the number of applications that we were dealing with 5 years ago. So I guess that's the worrying trend, and I take the point you've already made about some of the challenges that you've had this year, but it's just to be mindful that there is a year-on-year thing, and as I say, we're sort of probably just over 50%. If we look at the first year, there were 4,000 and more, however many applications, and now we're 2,500. So.
Yeah, I mean the 22-23 they're higher because that was at the tail end of the back what the roads during the pandemic, so that the team were working through that. I mean, in terms of the drop in percentage, absolutely noted. I think what I would counter with is I don't think there's a massive difference between 95.3% and 93.4%. I think they're all within a continuum. I think the drop down to 87.7% is more noticeable. Yeah. And my expectation would be, there was the training issue in terms of how things were being recorded, and they were also grappling with a pilot system. With those issues dealt with and out of the way, I would expect that 87.7% to go back up to somewhere in amongst those three figures in the columns to the left. So that's what I would say about that. But I think it's a fair observation.
The other point you might be expecting me to raise is check-ins, which are down and although you started in May above the corporate targets, they've sort of gone in the wrong direction, albeit sort of up and down. But generally, you're better than the last Scrutiny meeting, which was 2 weeks ago, because they were all pretty poor. But it would be nice to see those above the corporate target, given that you're a service area that you know, largely is sort of desk-based rather than the regions in the last Scrutiny where, you know, lots more of those people are site-based and carry different challenges. You know that I raise that each time.
Yeah, of course. Look, that statistic is what it is. What I can say is I'm aware of it, and I've been aware of it for probably 2 or 3 months now in conversations that have already taken place and will continue to take place, because I do consider check-ins to be important. That's how information priorities are percolated down the organisation. So I'm on it, Chair.
Fantastic. And one final point from me then is the review of the technology for the meetings that we've discussed a few times in group leaders meetings, and I know is an action for you. It's due to be sort of completed by December 2026. It's not started, albeit the wording says it's sort of with procurement, so it may be sort of slightly starting, but not immediately. I would suggest, given where we are and the complexities around procurement and the like, that we're probably going to struggle to meet that. So I don't know if you've got an update as to where we might be on that. You know, we've talked about improving the voting sort of mechanisms in the council. We've had some problems with microphones and stuff as well. So it's all that really, which is fairly complex.
Yeah, two parts to that question really. One, about the date, I thought I'd change that. I don't think that's made it through as the final version. I don't think the 31st of December 26 is feasible. However, I would like to think that we could implement that at some point during 2027. In terms of the actual piece of work itself, what we are trying to gather is the information about available suppliers that we can obtain equipment from. I think once we have an understanding of what might be available on the market, we can start to draft a tender and go out to the market and see what the market comes back with. I mean, and it is starting to progress now. Obviously, the service manager's on leave at the moment, but I know she's moved certain things forward on it, and when she returns from leave, I'll be catching up with her about it again. Obviously, there's two issues. We need a more modern voting system, in my opinion, in council meetings, and the other one is that equipment is coming towards the end of its life, and you know, really, we need to be making sure that we're ahead of the curve before it falls over. So again, it's progressing not as fast as we would like. That's why it's amber. You know, the challenge, to be frank, that particular part of the services had is that they've had 4 big things that will go at once. You know, they've been looking at that. They've been looking at the boundary review. They've been looking at scrutiny and participation scheme. You know, all big chunks of work, and the manager election was mentioned as well. So I think the challenge they've had is they've had 4 big things at the same time. That's how it's ended up being amber. But you know, there is a little bit of light appearing at the end of the tunnel, and they are starting to get things like that through the system. So yeah, whilst we can't hold that 31st of December 26th date, it is progressing.
Fantastic. So on the sort of mid-year reviews, we'll get a revised sort of progress and date on that.
I would very much hope there'll be some tangible progress to report in the mid-year.
Fantastic. Okay, that is it from me. Any other questions from any other committee on any of those things that were raised? Okay, fantastic. We'll just wrap up recommendations. Two then.
Not the recommendation, the committee members have the direction of trying to progress in review of the council's constitution and identify how any necessary funding being secured.
This recommendation would be just to update the progress on the equipment for council at the mid-year review.
No, Chair. Is there any other comments or recommendations the committee would like to make in regards to this report?
No. Fantastic record time. Thank you very much. No problem at all. Thanks everyone.
Cheers.
I was just saying, quick drink this thank you, because I don't know if Tracy's waiting for anybody else to join.
We're outside.
Yeah, oh, there we are.
Yeah.
We'll be ready for that. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Chair,
Yeah.
can you hear me? Is Tracy McKim sitting in on the next meeting? Oh, Tracy.
Hello.
Hello, sorry to bother you. It's Councillor Matthew Pym. Would you be available for a conversation at some point today or tomorrow morning in regards to the event over Beechwood Park on the weekend?
Okay, we'll probably need Sylvia. Shall I talk to you outside of this? Sylvia being Parks.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. It's an issue with the car parking spaces for the big food festival in Beechwood Park on the weekend.
Okay. The only thing is, Madam Chair, I'm not sure about expected to happen around this.
Which cabinet members do you expect?
Message both because I can see we were running early.
Which one do you expect?
Deb Davis and Jason
Right.
Williams. I think they were both drinking online. Just yes. Sorry for technical, so I'll just.
Yeah, should we just give we'll just hang fire for a couple of minutes and while you try and get them to join us if that's okay. You can blame your colleagues in law so
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Okay, there's no one in the car park, is there? Otherwise, I just think we just.
I think we was expecting all of the general rules to
Yeah, we're supposed to.
keep them out. Even but I don't know if any of the because they don't have a show on the screen, so I don't know whether people have joined or on the new screen. So.
At least one was coming straight from somewhere else, so I think we'll just go ahead.
Yeah, fine. if you're happy, then we'll make a start rather than delay, and then they can pitch you next month.
Thanks.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So we're looking at the People Policy and Transformation Service Plan, which is, page 25 in the pack. There's rather a number of us in the room because it's a really diverse service area. So if I just point to everyone that's in the room, Councillor Deb Davis, Cabinet Member for in this context. Thank you very much for early. Thank you, Deb. Cabinet Member for HR in this context. We're also expecting Cabinet Member Jason Hughes regarding equalities. I think Mike apologised for Anna Corton, Leader and Rhian Harold aren't available. So we have 5 Cabinet Members, which I think reflects the diversity of the service. In the room we've got Kate Osmond, Janice Dent, Sean Powell, Mark Bessard, Dan Cook. If I just run through a few highlights and lowlights, and then we'll take questions. So we are a wide range of service, and we're effectively a service to all the other services. So we do a lot of work with all of the other services. And we also report to Scrutiny something like 12 or 13 times during the year, but it's other Scrutiny committees. So we're responsible for 11 of the corporate reports and some of the partnership reports to go to those various committees, and so we can point to some of that information if needs be. That's an important part of our work. Those reports need to be submitted on time. A lot of them are statutory, so lots of work goes into that. They were all successfully completed during this year, and we're now moving into picking up the actions from those and the reports that are done during this year, which relate to last year. The first of those was Welsh language, and that's just been published. That's a statutory requirement that goes to Council next. We also support the service planning process. The stuff you'll see here, we support all of that and the performance and monitoring there. All of the digital work at the Council, and in this year, I think we were the first council to develop and certainly get published and approved our AI policy, and we've got a lot of work around AI reported in the report, AI automation and you know, all its friends and family, so to speak. It would be remiss of me not to note the delivery of the Norse, the completion of the Norse JV into the Cynghorydd new company, LAPTCO, which I led with Rhys, and a number of colleagues here worked on that, and also provide SLAs into the new service, so that's allowed us to expand our service a little bit. We also collect all of the information management requirements. We work on any data breaches, support services with all of that, alongside health and safety, lots of other compliance requirements, people plan and so on. In terms of challenges, in the last year, the Cynghorydd work was very, very significant and took a lot of time and resource and effort, but ultimately worth it, we hope. You'll see within the PIs some real issues around things like FOIs and SARs, which just keep going up in numbers and complexity, and we'd be happy to answer any questions on that. We've done a real lot of work around complaints, and we're about to launch the new policy. We got to get that done last year, but that's in a draft report to go to the Cabinet Member shortly. And all of the work we do with regulators can jump in front of other work. You know, the work we do, if anything's raised with us by one of the commissioners or one of the regulators, clearly we need to act on that quite quickly. As we look forward into next year, we'll actually be supporting the development of the new corporate plan. We're due to renew the digital strategy, the Welsh language strategy, and lots of work around those. Clearly the work with key partnerships continues, One Newport, Safety Newport, which I didn't mention. And we're also keen to continue the evolution of the website. So that's been a long time work in progress, very significant work, huge both technical, language and content changes there, but that's almost a never-ending piece now. We need to get that into business as usual. And our digital comms, you see online the reels and the different way of communicating, which we've worked on with Councillor Corton. The only other thing to mention, because we are very diverse, is the engagement. We report to different scrutiny committees on that. But anyone who wants to do anything around consulting with the public, determining what the public think about things, we've got the Over 50s Forum, the Citizens Panel, and we also assist with any surveys or national workplaces. Also within the team. That would probably be my intro. Back to the team for all of that. We'll take any questions.
Thanks, Tracy. Cabinet Member Redden, shall I add anything? Don't feel obliged.
I didn't say people plan. Please say people plan.
Certainly people plan, and that's engagement and focus with our staff. We are nothing without our council officers, and it's the support that they get, and that's a primary focus of the HR team under Kevin. We just only this week had the conference, which went really, really well. I can't remember who attended, but it was really
650-ish.
yeah, really, really well attended. People were well supported. The thematic review from Audit Wales was really, really positive outcome, and really enabled us to sell our strategic function, which I don't think when you look at other, I can say this, you look at other Audit Wales reports across Wales, ours actually is far more substantial, and we could find it very little to criticise us on. Actually, they were very, very positive about the fact that we do those difficult things in regards to ensuring that people are safe in work. We do those difficult things in regards to recruitment and retention. So it was a really, really positive report, and I'm hoping all of you had a chance to read that. So yeah, it's been a really good year. So yeah, and also being part of the consulting formation as well, and continue as a board member, so seeing that through the process of development, and that's going really well as well.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Before I throw over to the committee for questions, in terms of the people plan, that you've just mentioned as well, the thematic review, the committee, in discussing its forward work programme, would have requested a sort of full update on some of the people plan stuff. Clearly, there's lots of progress since the last time we updated. So Neil can liaise with you in terms of timescales and where we ideally like to fit you in, but be a good opportunity for you to tell us in a bit more detail about that success. If that's okay. Yeah, great, fantastic. Okay. Over to the committee for questions, then, please. Councillor Longford.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of apprenticeships. I was just looking on, I think it's page 23, number of apprentices working for Newport City Council. So we're down on that, and presumably that's because of getting access to funding.
Largely, so apprentice roles can be created by services within their structures, but largely we seek wherever possible external funding, and therefore those bigger numbers come in via funding. We're pursuing a couple of options at the moment, I think it's fair to say. But we've had some really good success in the last couple of years, and it will be a struggle to sustain that, I think. It's important for us because people go on within the organisation to do great work. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Okay, this is Datganiadau. Obviously, we've had fortunate to have SPF for the last we've come up to 3 years. We've brought a batch of 20 apprentices in, and they've gone on to do bigger and better things in the organisation. Tracy said, we're trying to explore whether there's a new fresh plan that we can look at this year now. But yeah, slightly towards the end of the tail end of last year. Probably more because those 20 will even go on to different things. Plus we're trying to identify when there's a bit of a lack there. But as Tracy said, service areas can convert posts into apprentices or funding into apprentices of their own initiative, but then there's capacity and then there's use there. That's actually quite difficult, so I'll have to look at extra funding to do that.
Maybe preempt this, but once the apprenticeship is finished, and what's the retention rate? Like how many of the apprentices actually get offered jobs, and through their apprenticeship, what sort of indications do they get that they have a future with the council? Because I think I've spoken to one or two of them, and they've been uncertain as to what comes after. Is that something we can talk to?
Yeah, so as part of particularly the grant monies, there was a coordinator identified for the apprentice programme, and that coordinator sits outside the service area the apprentice is in. A coordinator supports a lot of those things you said, what's next, what can I look for, how do I develop CV writing skills, so that's happened and still happens. I don't have the specific numbers in terms of potential, but saying the large majority of those have gone on to different things in the organisation. Some of those have gone out to other organisations as well, so we've supported people move around in the city. That's also positive. But where we can identify vacancies in the organisation, we're going to rapidly encourage them to putting them forward for those activities.
Yeah.
I can give you specific numbers separately as a follow-up action.
Okay.
That's great, thanks.
We could have it as part of the people updated. People haven't updated anyway. I know it's till half time, isn't it? So
Yeah, if we do that, I was just thinking about that, because the numbers is part of the story, and we also got some case studies, haven't we?
Yeah.
That's tricky because I identify as people, but it is
Yeah.
important to look at the individual
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
people and how that's impacted them. And the other thing I would say is some have not gone on necessarily in the council, but have gone on in the Welsh Public Services, which is also important,
So
isn't
it's
it?
a good springboard.
Yes, it's development.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is available to share with the cabinet member and the clerk of the SPF as well. Those case studies are possible.
You probably have to report it for SBF anyway in terms of outcomes anyway, didn't you? So
absolutely.
let's have it in terms of the people update with some of the case studies. I think
There's
that'd
some
be
really
great.
positive narratives there.
Yeah, definitely.
You don't get a job here, it enables you to get a job somewhere else, and that's what matters.
You stole my question, Councillor Mogford. But I was just going to sort of go on to say, really, and you partly touched on it, Tracy, in terms of sort of looking beyond apprentices and bringing external funding, but how many opportunities are we actually realistically looking at? Instead of advertising a post, could we create an apprenticeship type post? And there's certainly a bigger push now for kind of degree apprenticeships. So are we looking at partnering with the universities to bring in particularly those roles that we struggle to recruit for, those sort of specialist roles that we've talked, haven't we, a few times about growing our own to kind of fill those roles? And is that sort of linked to this?
Yeah, if I start on the sort of apprentices, and then perhaps I'll hand over to Kev on the degree level. Both are important, aren't they? We encourage, and the HRT will work with service areas, so if there's a vacancy sort of at that admin end where it could work for an apprentice and they could be trained. We've got a number of roles in our own department which we've got traditionally have been filled by a recruited member of staff with those qualities. Actually, we've got apprentices in those roles and we'll teach them those things. We actively encourage that, and that's really helped with our recruitment and retention. Obviously, sometimes there are times where you just want to recruit someone with those skills to get on with it. You've got to balance that with service delivery, but we do work on that and try and make that a more and more go-to approach. Do you want to cover the qualifications at other levels?
Yeah, so part of that Audit Wales outcome that Deb mentioned, they came in and looked at recruitment retention and how we support some of those harder to recruit roles and all sorts. I think I mentioned it in the recruitment retention report. But there are areas in the council where we've identified that's a difficult to recruit, whether it's non-apprenticeship, it's maybe a different level. So there's a social work programme, assembling the planning the team, build the control team, look at engineering roles. We're also doing stuff like trying to bring some of our more vulnerable elements of the city into roles as well, that are not necessarily apprenticeship, but into those first level roles. So things like working with the prison service, we haven't actually done that yet, but actually we're looking at whether we can do some of that activity. We do work closely with the University of South Wales in terms of the programme across the city, so we're actively engaging with other partners. So there's lots happening, I suppose, in terms of those areas. So we know what our hard to recruit roles are, and each of the 11 service areas will have a workforce plan to try and target those interventions where they need it. And they might be a variety of different things. They might not be about the things we'll discuss, apprenticeships, degrees, etc. They might be less funding internally for people to go off and do stuff. And obviously look at the L&D programme as well. The other measure obviously in the report is the number of workplace apprentices, which is the current staff and taking an apprentice rather than coming in as an apprentice. Yeah. So obviously we're encouraging that across the organisation.
Fantastic, thank you. Any other questions?
Hi, Chair.
Yeah, go on, Councillor.
Yeah, if you can hear me. I was just wondering, the first 6 months has been the establishment of the new Lacto Cynghorydd that is now wholly I think that the quote in it is wholly owned by NCC. For those of us that are not really familiar with Cais and Cymru, could we just have a brief outlay or explanation as to what's going to differ from Cais and Cymru to Newport North moving forward, both from grassroots and also to corporate customers? What can we expect that will be different or improved?
I think that's probably a separate remit from this committee's in terms of performance. I'm sure that is probably out there already.
Shall I give a very quick outline?
I was going to say, if you keep it brief, we can always share them.
Yeah.
There are documents
There
that
are
we can share them.
documents, absolutely. So I'm really conscious that I'm flanked by directors of the company, so.
Do you want me to?
By all means.
Do you want me to?
Can I say it's custom like the soap?
Custom.
It's so, someone said to me recently, it's custom like the soap, so if that helps, then custom like the soap.
So very, very briefly to answer the question, so I've declared interest. I've also chaired the board of directors for Cais and Cymru, so that this will be an organisation, Newport City Council deal with this. So I think recently, in the last cabinet meeting, there was a project closed down report that went to cabinet, and it's got most of this in there.
Yeah.
Councillor Pym, so if you want to look at that. So there's a little reminder. So the previous arrangement, which was in place from 2014, was a joint venture arrangement with Dros for property services or commercial services, one of the other, because they're two different companies, for a profit share arrangement on activities of Newport North, which meant that the operating surplus of the company, there was a volume rebate back to the local authority on that, so about 50% or it was a formula, so I say about 50% of that volume rebate would come back to the local authority. I suppose our issues going back to the working group we had with Scrutiny around that was there was a lot of transparency around the charging arrangements, etc. And we need to work through that. And Scrutiny working group made a recommendation we should set a wholly owned local authority trading company, which has already done, has been in operation since January 1st, called Cais and Cymru, operating as the operational arm of Newport Commercial Services, because what we've done is essentially created a bit of a group structure in order to do other things as well in this way. So, Newport City Council is the only shareholder. Most important decisions of the company are reserved matters for the Cabinet. So the Council has control of that. Cabinet on the board, the directors for it. So at the moment it's myself, Councillor Davis, and Paul Jones, the Director of Private and Public Protection. Any operating surplus of that is wholly the companies, and therefore wholly Newport's. It's been set on the basis of social value and creating value for the people of Newport. So partly that is, there's been a lot of work done already, and it's out with service users, really transparent charging mechanisms, and clarity of what the charges are for, and how costs are derived. So that was right from the beginning of this right on day one, much more clarity for the council about what it forms part of the core service of the City Council funds. Actually already more commercial intent from our entity to get work other than from the City Council, because the other benefit that we will derive from this is actually it's generating profit from work it does outside of the Newport City Council. So that's kind of where we are. But Council, I think most of that's in the cabinet report that went to the last meeting. It goes to partnership scrutiny committee every 6 months or something like that.
It's in November, December.
Yeah. So we go through all of that in detail.
I was going to say the same. So it's in the cabinet papers, I think last cabinet report, and it will go to partnerships in November as well. So Neil can always share. So those are
the only other thing to say, I guess, is within the service area, we're really conscious on the council side, if you like, not the north side. There was always a very light client function. It's very, very light client function, and we knew we needed to really strengthen that, and we have, so we changed our own structure. So the council is a much more robust client, dominates that in the future, because setting something up new needs something on the other side to speak to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Councillor.
Is that okay, Councillor Pym?
Yes, that's fine, Chair.
Thanks. Councillor Cleverly?
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to come in on that question for Councillor Pym. Schools by me, Councillor, the cleaning staff, and I know the caretaker in the school behind me is Sison, and they've also had a lorry moving all the stuff from the school into their new classroom for the nursery, which starts next season, if that helps you.
Thanks, Councillor Cleverly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Councillor Jason Clark has joined us during the presentation. Apologies, Councillor, not Councillor Clark, Councillor Hughes, sorry, my fault. Yeah. Councillor Hughes, sorry. Apologies, Councillor Hughes. We started a bit early for this service area because the other one finished a bit early. Don't feel obliged, but if you did want to add anything at this stage, feel free to do so.
Thanks, Chair. I'm absolutely fine, thanks.
Okay, a couple of questions from me, if that's okay. Check-ins, very good in your service area, as one would expect. Not so good across the other service areas that we look at anyway for the, so last time around, all the service areas were under target, and the service area before you was under target, and the service area after you was under target. So although you scraped the organisational target just about, that scraping the organisational target is because your service areas are propping everybody else up. And you do say that you're hoping to address the other 30%. I just worry that, you know, we aren't doing enough to make sure that all our staff get a regular check-in with their manager. And I'm often told that these things are happening and not recorded very well. That's the sort of narrative I get. And, you know, I'll push back as a committee is unless they're recorded, you have no evidence of that, and that causes problems down the future, as you know, HR professionals will know. Perhaps we could sort of have a thought in the update on the people plan about kind of what we might do to sort of bring the other service areas performing as well as you guys do.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick response.
Yeah.
I think that is helpful to come back to that. I mean, firstly, I think I sat and heard you ask other people, and I think that's helpful for the committee to ask that question. And thanks for the backhanded compliments that we obviously we do need to set the standard.
Yeah, good.
I would just draw your attention to the improvement organisation-wide over 2 years, because that's really significant, and I don't want to lose sight of that. And there is that balance between, we are really pushing on recording, but we don't want them to be, I can't think of the right word, but tick box exercises, burdensome. We want it to be a real proper engagement, meaningful, thanks. So there is always that balance when we're pushing. We recognise, and you referenced it before my colleagues came in, you referenced it in another service, that sometimes that's really challenging when people are out on the tools, so to speak, and not in offices. There is more to be done, I suspect, on both recording and doing, but some of it will be in the recording. We've hugely improved the way they're recorded, and that's reflected there. And the way people can get access, so individual managers can quite quickly see how they're doing individually at any time. They can, you know, have a look at MI at any time. So all of that access to data and information, but we recognise there's more to be done. I don't know if you want to add any more to that, or we pick that up in that review.
Yeah, I think you've said it.
Yeah. Fantastic. A couple of other things then. Page 46 on the left-hand side, page numbers, is around the asset programme, which was due to be completed in December 25. So should that be a red rather than an amber? And I guess it'll roll over. And the same for the one below that then, which was March 2026. Should that be a red?
Yeah, we talked about that a lot actually, because both of them closed just after. So actually they have both closed, and they could have done their closed down report, but it was outside of that.
Yeah.
I would call that a near miss. But yes, it did miss. Of course it did. The assets were more so, we have debated that, we can amend that It did miss, yes, but it has, I wanted to assure you, it subsequently had a full project closed down. We picked through the details on that and what we need to pick up going forward. I won't bore you with it because the committee did with these sorts of things, but so much changed during that. You know, we started that we were kind of optimising and seeking to reduce our assets, and now we're in things like the Eliminate programme where we're seeking to repurpose our assets and potentially buy more. So the objectives did change along the way somewhat, but we have done a full close down and that was reported.
Fab. And the one before that is was due to be completed 31st of March 2026, then it's to be amended to December 2027, so I'm guessing that's going to go on to next year, which is the building requirements for staff accommodation as part of the assets. So they're all linked really into the one. I just wonder whether that should be green, given we're extending the deadline.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I mean, again, we looked at, should we call that green, because the original objectives were achieved and then we set off on something else, haven't we, really? But yeah, we can amend that also, I think. So there's another piece of work, I think it's been mentioned in Cabinet reports, where we're working with some external resource to look at what's our best use of our accommodation in buildings like this that are underutilized particularly. Just sort of a phase 2 to that original work.
Yeah.
We can amend that.
So it may well be that it's actually complete and there's a new
I think that's probably more accurate.
Yeah, so that's right.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, Councillor Morgan?
There's a supplementary to what you said, Rhys, about Customer you were a director. What's the relationship now with Newport North?
There is no relationship with
There is
Newport North doesn't exist.
The Hotel Company House.
Well, it hasn't been, can't be closed down to the final accounts are done.
Oh, okay. So there is no relationship. That was my question.
There's no contractual relationship with Newport North. I would, my caveat to that is, Councillor Davis is still directors in Newport North, so you've got his house. It can't be closed down until we get the final set of accounts first. I mean, that won't be till October, November. So.
Okay. Any other questions from any of the committee?
No, Chair.
Wrap up any recommendations?
Only recommendations got chair committee requested an update on the people plan be added to the committee's work programme, and your most recent one is like the action review the building requirements of staff accommodation as part of the assets work programme and request for it to be amended. Was any other comments, recommendations the committee would like to make?
There was the one about sharing the outcomes from the Cynghorydd implementation.
It's on there, so
you can share that. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good day. We are wrapping up. I did also. I was going to raise that one back to you. Yeah, that's probably fine, no problem. We'll just committee will have a we'll have a 5 minute, we'll have a 7 minute comfort break, and we'll come back at 35 if that's okay. 1:35. Just while we ask next service areas to come through. So
okay.
Hold on a second. Yeah. So we'll be back at 1:35. Okay. Welcome back, councillors. We are just waiting for the last couple of series managers to join us, so we'll just sit tight for a minute or two if that's okay.
Yes, she's moving away. Yeah, she's 2 in the end. Show it out, but so she's doing long. Yeah, 45 minutes. We're back.
Okay, welcome back, councillors. We're on to our third and final service area of the day. We're just waiting for one service manager who will join us during our discussions, but I'll hand over to Marion to start us off, if that's okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
There's no cabinet members. Dimitri, is it? Yeah.
So yeah, unfortunately, the cabinet member can't be here this afternoon. The census apologies last weekend.
Yeah.
So you'll see in the reports that we are making progress on a number of our objectives. There are some ongoing issues on a couple of them, but they are progressing and those are being managed as best we can. And on our performance indicators, most of those are in green. We've got a cluster of ambers in Emma's area, in Emma's and Ben's, but they're very close to being on sort of target. So we're not unduly concerned at this time on those. So in terms of the core kind of issues, we think that we're okay. We've got some challenges, but that's not being managed. Sickness continues to be our kind of biggest sort of challenge, and actually is a part of the reason why some projects, etc., have slipped a bit. We've still got a lot of long-term sickness hitting our figures and hitting our kind of work, and unfortunately it still seems to be the case. So as a team, we've had the conversation with our HR business partner. All managers are now going on training about maximising the benefits of keeping in touch with our wellbeing meetings. there's a difference between a wellbeing meeting to see how people are, which is fine, and a wellbeing meeting which is focused on how you are and when can we expect you back and what can we do to sort of support that. So we just want to make sure that that kind of nuance is really well understood and by everybody. All of us are going on that training, myself included. I think that's really important. Return to work interviews will also be where there are some persistent issues. The service managers will now sit in on those as well. So long-term sickness is different to short-term. And it needs to be managed differently. But given our ongoing challenges and sickness, we do need to up the game a little bit there and to change algorithms if possible. So that's what we are doing. And that's the summary, really. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Over to the committee for questions then, please.
Oh, come on, I've got a question about the customer contact charter.
Yes.
It's a very notable thing. The expected completion date is August 2027.
Yeah.
And you were red and now green. Could you just talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, we started work on this at the beginning of the customer improvements project, but actually what we realised, or what we came to the conclusion, is that doing it at that point at the beginning of the project was going to be helpful, because we could never hope to maybe achieve it at that point. The whole point of this project is to be better at the end of it and progress towards that. So the intention is still to develop a customer charter, but to actually improve it and sort of start to live it and measure against it towards the back end of the project when that's done. Because I think then, having done the project, there's every expectation that we should be able to meet our aspirations. Doing it at the beginning, which is just a document that you can't hope to achieve. That's why we're doing the project. So we're doing it, but we've decided to actually put that at the back end when we've done the project.
So who is responsible for this charter? Who's providing the inputs to it?
Well, so customer services will coordinate the drafting of that charter, working across all services. It'll probably be signed off by corporate management team, and it will then, go into the formal approval mechanism, probably through sort of cabinets, etc. Because that will be a council charter to its customers out there. Which is why we have to be very careful that we get this right. Really, the charter is something that we can live with, but also that we implement it when we've done the prep work for it.
This predates your time on this committee because we had a fairly robust debate about whether it should go at the start or finish, really, a bit of chicken and egg. I think I and probably, I know Councillor Reeks at the time, who was your sort of predecessor, were of the view it should come at the start and aspire to, and officers were of the view it should come at the end when we've got a more realistic chance of meeting it, because and I take your point, it's well made that you put something in place now and you just can't sustain and meet it. That leaves the debate about whether it's sort of smart and realistic and achievable. So we were probably in a different place when we started and initially sort of set out the whole customer contact review journey, I think. So that, for a bit of context, is where it comes from. We're also due on the forward work programme this year, a customer contact update, so we can sort of probe that in a bit more detail and progress on it as well. When's that?
21st
September as well, so that's all in September, so we can kind of get into a bit more nitty-gritty on it then as well.
I'll say it because I'm the SRO of the project, but we had the debate as officers. We've had the debate in the committee, and you know, it wouldn't have done our, you know, our population of people or our staff much good really. If we lost them, we can have a really low group of achieving, and we want to, you know, we want to get good. We want to be good. We want to deliver really good services, and actually we want to be able to account for them. So it's how we sequence that. So that's a time scale. But I think, you know, when we come back in September, we'll give a full exploration of where we are on the project, and we'll probably have that debate.
Yeah, exactly.
As part of the who's, you know, going through the project bit. So obviously we did a lot of work really in Kerry's here now as well around, you know, the process and the system. There's been a lot of really good work done. We had a conversation about that at the last group leaders meeting as well. So there's a lot of really good work being done on that. We've also got to do some work around, I suppose, two big things in there. We're working our way through the organisation, but it's also the back end. So our systems and processes can be as good as we want it to be, but if we haven't actually got the service to deliver at the back end in the right way, then that's not much good. So we're digging into that now. And then it's still the other bit, which Mike was in, obviously, Ymddiheuriadau is leading on, which is the members bit of this as well, because there's a customer side of it, but there's also a bit of the project, which is, and not just the project, but the organisation. What is the interface between officers and members? How do we as officers enable you to do your, we've got the conversation about this, yes, but how do we as officers enable you to do your job?
Members are customers.
Yeah. No, that's why I kind of separated those things. It's not, it's linked to the customer contact project. It's a bigger thing. We've got this notional thing, which is the officer management protocol. It's about actually how do we do that better, you know? Probably goes back as also to the early conversation we were at about the Constitution, because there's some words in there that require some clarity around bullying as well. So it's, that bit gets quite complicated, but you know, that's a piece of what we need to do with members.
Yeah, and the project is basically, you've got service area reviews, sprints as they call it, but also in parallel with that, we've got some training issues across the organisation, and we've got some structural or performance issues in the customer services team around keeping in touch with services as well. And that's because a lot of what we're seeing should, you know, and fixing and improving that. You'd have liked to have thought that they were business as usual stuff, really, but they weren't. So we just need to get the service areas tuned in. You know, there is a customer at the end of this function somewhere, and how does this feel to them? And if it's something that's not, that wouldn't be good to the customer, then they need to, you know, services need to be proactive in fixing it in whatever form or shape. Customer services also needs to bring that same challenge to those problems where they exist as well. So between everybody, we're spotting these kind of, you know, own goals or kind of things that are suboptimal at the moment that can be improved. And that's where the training comes in, and that's where structure within customer services, the roles there come into as well. With the charter being the kind of the overriding aspiration of the organisation. So there's two bits of work happening in parallel, really. One's like a organisational-wide, service-specific.
To give balance, though, we have probably best part of 1 million service requests coming through for you. Vast majority of them are resolved, no issues. You know, so we get it right most of the time. Sometimes we don't get it right, you know, but it's about learning about that and just making sure actually they're hit right in the sense.
Yeah. In terms of the customer charter, there might be perhaps something we could pick up a bit more focus at our September meeting. But actually, it's thinking about how we might involve resident voice in setting a charter, particularly around engagement here, because it's all very well us sort of doing two and telling the community what we think we ought to deliver to them, but actually what do they expect from us? And there might be a meeting in the middle somewhere around what that looks like. So it'd be really useful to think about, you know, as you sort of move towards developing that charter, what does a customer involvement, a resident involvement look like in actually determining? You know, you might find that the things that you see as a priority that customers might tell you are not quite as much of as a priority as something else perhaps. So it'd be useful to think about that as you do that. Yeah, go on.
You mentioned, is it about 1 million service requests? Kerry, how many?
Yeah, we do, getting on for about 1 million.
That's a very large number, and it makes me think about the discussion we had the other day about the dashboard. You know, it would be very interesting to see how that 1 million breaks down. You know, and if 500,000 of those were potholes, you know, I think we'd have a big problem. So I'd like to understand the pie chart, if you like, of where these issues are coming from, because some of them must be totally legitimate. Others must be like overlap. There's a lot of people raising similar issues, and I see an opportunity for a lot of efficiency there. And maybe it's outside of the scope of this meeting, but I can see as a councillor, as a customer, you know,
avoidable duplication. The project is looking to improve stuff so that can be avoided. As far as possible. People will do it, but wherever possible, avoiding duplication is hopefully one. And we've already seen that actually in the highways figures that we've been seeing since we've done it. There are less contacts because people are having to duplicate stuff less. So that's positive, but we need to see that improving across other areas as well. EPP in particular, I think, where that's the next biggest postback. EPP. Yeah, so refuse recycling. So
we're in September, we can dig into all of that.
Yes.
On that. You know, the focus of the work is originally, we were having a lot of duplicate calls coming in, and that's the kind of ground zero of this was trying to stop that. Get it right the first time, so somebody's not contacted this 3 or 4 different times in my So that's stuff coming by the website, isn't it? Emails, phone calls, etc. So it's not all phone in the contact centre. So we can go through all the metrics around that, and we've been done so far to do that. There's been stuff done with the council services. So I know we picked this up in the conversation we had the other day, when I came back to your comment. Which is around, if you want to report something, it actually says, well, this is already reported, so you haven't got to put the reporting as well. So we're putting those mechanisms in place. So a lot of the stuff around making it more efficient and effective, we're working through, doing it systematically, going through it service by service. I suspect we'll probably have to come back and have a look at some of those things as we go through. But at the point, we 70,000 people, we deliver 800 different services. You know, there's not a person in this city that doesn't have a service office in one way, shape or form. You know, we have a lot of calls. They're not complaints, they're service requests. So, you know, people asking for things or reporting things. So there's a variety of those. So yeah, but we can go through all that.
Yeah, it'd be useful to pick up on that. One of the things, not so much in your plan, but it's a recommendation from the mid-service reviews, which is outstanding, and which we've recommended several times, is that the recommendation on there is the committee wish to reiterate previous recommendations to Cabinet to review and consider increasing its resources in customer service, especially given recurring staffing challenges. And it would be useful to pick that up in the September meeting, because we've had no sort of response either from the Cabinet members, not here to be fair today, or officers on that recommendation. Still think it's outstanding, and it's been on there from November last year, and it's also followed on from a recommendation this committee's made previously as well. So you don't have to answer it now, but I think it'd be useful to pick it up in September meeting. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, just a couple from
Not from me, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Pimp. Lots of the actions in the report are sort of expected completion date March 2026. None of them are red really, but not many of them are complete either. And there are a few that are green and a few that are orange. I wonder whether, given we're sort of past March, whether they all ought to be red, or certainly some to be orange. And I just wonder whether you ought to sort of review and go back through. I can go through them line by line, but there are quite a few, so I don't do that unnecessarily.
Yeah, we can go through. I mean, most of the ambers are in relation to the timescale issue, not being able to do something per se. It is around slippage. So we'll take another look at those. In line with your comments there.
Fab. And check-ins, bins, I've raised it with every other service area that's come before us. Yours are pretty good, and you're helping the organisation to get closer to its organisational targets. So you're above average, so I was going to commend you on that, because you are the only service area, apart from the people team, who obviously lead the way to meet their targets. But I'm just sort of mindful of your comments at the start about sort of sickness, and obviously check-ins play a key part in that, as well as the return to work sort of discussions that you mentioned. So it's just that sort of reminder for the other 15%, I guess. But, well done for being above the organisational target.
Yeah, no, thank you. And the guys here and their team. And of course, we also do well-being meetings as well.
Yeah.
Which are very, very specific towards the sickness stuff.
Yeah.
More so than the standard check-in. It's all contact, isn't it? It's all.
Yeah, absolutely. And those opportunities to have a discussion with the line manager and with your work are key to people's well-being. Anyway, that's the whole point of it, isn't it? That's where you proactively identify those issues early on. So hopefully, workload and stress and all the rest of it, that, where people need support is critical, isn't it? And, the last service area before you said, and I can't remember actually, for that area, said, people are our biggest and most key asset, aren't they, in terms of deliveries?
I think on balance, I think we would probably say that we do relatively support people's requirements fairly well if there is any challenges in their lives. That's good.
Yeah, no, it's a much more impressive sample than some of the nothing further from me. Any comments from any other committee members, or shall we move on to recommendations?
Chair, can I ask a question?
Certainly can.
It's regarding the efficiency savings expenditure. Now, you due to end on August 31st, so you've got a month left. Is that progressing well? Because I see you've got senior procurement officers will undertake a high-level review. Now, was that going to be on time, and are we on target to make savings?
Shall I answer that? Yeah, so the procurement team and the senior procurement officers have done a high-level review of the 25-26 external spend. We've put a spreadsheet together which has been circulated to the chief exec and strategic directors for them to discuss potential savings opportunities during the service review sessions which are taking place now over the summer. So we've looked at every service area, we've ranked the spend with external suppliers. We've looked at the top 50 suppliers in each service area. So we've given all that information out now. Now it's a question for the service areas to look at that and see whether they can make any efficiencies in those areas, whether they can consolidate spend, whether we're using any off-contract suppliers. So that work is progressing at the moment.
Okay, so we should see something come back in September, is it? No next meeting, or?
The update for this group will be mid-year in November, December.
Right.
And Councillor Linden, just to say, so we've got, so each service area now, down one, I think, we've got the next one tomorrow. So each of the 11 service areas will go through a service support session. We're looking at, pressures over the next couple of years and how they're going to manage those. and this information is going to be fed into that. So you probably won't get anything back as a committee to that. It's just work that's in progress. It's going to support the budget modelling for the next couple of years. So.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
One other question which I forgot to ask, and it doesn't necessarily relate to your service area report, but given your finance for all of them. The legal team gave us a helpful case study about several £1 million that they've recovered from outstanding social work, adult social work, I think, sort of debtors, which was done in partnership with the finance team and other departments. How does that money go back into the council pot? Does that go into a reserve somewhere, or does that go into the service area as an underspend?
No, I mean, if it's a debt, we may have raised the invoice last year before that. So the income's already been recognised. We may have put in a bad debts provision against it. So when the money comes in, it goes against the debts that's been raised.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it would effectively go into a reserve that would be created for the debt.
No, that's not.
So there's not additional money to spend, is what I'm saying.
Often not. And it depends if it's already been raised as an income. If it hasn't, then it's revenue income line. Yeah. But if we've already raised the debt for it, and we probably should have done, then that just goes off against the debts.
So if we've got about £8 million outstanding, I think that was the original figure. That's over a period of time. If we don't get that money in the year it's due, how do we fund that then?
Pink can also be in here. I mean, I'm not a huge. This is on social care debts, or
yeah.
Okay. So if we raise,
like your colleagues are looking to help
you. No, good.
Yeah.
If we raise a debt, it's written off to
You can if you want. So with the social care outstanding debt that you're talking about there, the majority of that is for residential care. So obviously people are having invoices that they're not always able to pay at the time because maybe the income that the person has doesn't meet, can't actually pay for that. So what happens, the debt's deferred, it's fixed to the property, and a lot of what you've been seeing there is a concentrated effort to get that back once the property's been realised, once the family are in a position to settle the debt. These are by and large debts that people would rather not have to pay, so there is a reluctance on the part of not all but some families to hold on to that cash. And so it's a really big tricky area because you're negotiating with families often bereaved at that point because that's the time that they'll be selling the properties. But it does have to be repaid, so there is a concentrated effort to get that back, but also to prevent it getting to that stage so that these families, that they are paying their ongoing charges with the funds that they do have that they're managing on behalf of their loved ones, so that they don't get into the situation where there's a massive debt that needs to be realised when the estate is settled and that person ultimately passes away, which is who we are.
So my point then is that we've incurred the revenue cost maybe last year or the year before in providing those care facilities. So we're then getting some cash in, which must go somewhere for us to be available to spend.
Do you want me to
Please do.
Yeah. So obviously it's the cost, but then when they raise the invoice, we'll recognise the income that year when they do that. So that's in the service area's income line. So that's already accounted for. So then it becomes a debt. So then when the cash comes in, it sits on the balance sheet, basically the debt does. So when it actually comes into the organisation, it's just an accounting between the cash and the debtor. So there's no additional for the service area, there's no income to recognise the service area because they've already recognised it. But then that cash then will be, obviously we'll use it in the day-to-day operations then. So, but the debt is reduced basically.
And I guess what we are doing is preventing it becoming a bad debt.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if we don't actively do something to get the cash in, the longer it goes on, the longer the family have had the funds, and sometimes they've dispersed them. You know, we have to, you know, be involved with legal to actually get that money back and get it paid.
And those debts often linger on over several years if somebody's in care for several years, you know, until sort of, you know, they pass away or there's changed circumstances. Or, you know, so yeah, I mean.
And also what we're doing is that we've got a policy change now, whereby if anybody in a residential home it pays for their own care, they will now interact direct with the care home, as opposed to the council paying the care home and then having to recover it from the payer, which puts the risk on us, of course. So that was approved a few months ago, I think. So that's just building in now. That will hopefully start to reduce the increase in debts that we've got in this area, because that will be something that's taken care of between the care home and the individual who's in there or their family, of course.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. There was a scrutiny report on that in terms of change of policy with the scrutiny. If there was, I welcome. Okay, any other questions? Fantastic. We'll just wrap up recommendations if that's okay.
We're up here, Chair. Committee wish to praise the check-in rates for the service area. Committee recommended that consideration given of how the resident voice could be reflected in the development of the customer contact charter, including what residents and customers expect from the council and what meaningful resident and customer involvement should look like. Your comments, Chair, about some of the performance indicators. Some orange and they should be red because of the completion dates. What you just mentioned about that one, Chair, I'm not sure whether that would go to the People Committee, because that would consider as a People Committee.
I don't know, we'd have to double check.
In terms of reference for that, but
there's a need to be a recommendation on it, but if there's a report, just ask you.
It'd either be that or there was the cabinet report.
Go on.
I was just going to say the one around the cut chartered. Can you show? I think we said we one of the things we talked about on the 21st of November. So I just want to bring that just.
That's what I was going to say.
As part of what we probably needed some more thoughts around it. If the committee does well, we take that forward.
Yeah. Any other recommendations from any other committee members? Fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. Much appreciated. We just need to do our minutes from the last meeting recommendations. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
See you soon. Okay, scrutiny advice report is next on the agenda.
So, just advising the committee, we've sent out the completed actions and outcomes. We're still chasing out the outstanding ones at the moment. As soon as we receive them, we'll send them immediately to the committee. With the one that we just took for People Policy Transformation and report which went through the cabinet for the custom Cymru change, literally got our draft to send out. So we'll add that as a completed action. Our next committee meeting will be on Monday the 21st of September. We'll be discussing the replacement local development plan and the customer contact improvement project update. Not Chair, that's everything on my end.
Yep, there'll be 2 meaty agenda items, I think. So please make every effort to attend. I think we've seen from today that the customer contact improvement generates lots of discussion. It's something you all have an input in and you hear about all the time. So hopefully we can give some proper scrutiny to that and start to push towards completion. So that'll be really good. And then we are on to the minutes of the last meeting, which I'm happy with. The only sort of point is there's no recordings there for those, so we're just sort of going on the actions really rather than minutes, aren't we? So they're probably the actions from the last meeting, but I'm happy that they were a true record. Everybody else? Yeah. Perfect. Okay. That's it then. Meeting closed. Thank you very much. In record time. Well done, everyone. See you on the 25th. Enjoy the sunshine over the summer.
Cheers, guys. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Matt,
Yeah.
do you want to stay on a sec?
Yeah.